Remember when a basement bar in Boston became the most famous address on television and half the country showed up to watch a washed-up pitcher flirt with a woman who was clearly out of his league? Well, that was Cheers. Premiering on NBC in 1982 and running for 11 seasons, the show starred Ted Danson as Sam Malone, the smooth-talking ex-ball player turned bartender, Shelley Long, and later Kirstie Alley, as the woman who made his life significantly harder, George Wendt as Norm, Rhea Perlman as Carla, John Ratzenberger as Cliff, Woody Harrelson as Woody, and Kelsey Grammer as Frasier. Together, they turned a barstool sitcom into one of the most beloved shows in television history. But behind the tap handles, the laugh tracks, and Norm's endless tab, some of the weirdest, funniest, and most heartwarming stories were happening off-screen. And most people never heard them. But today we're going to count down 15 weird facts about Cheers. And stick around for number 1 because the story behind one quiet photo on the bar wall hits harder than anything the writers ever put in a script. But before we start, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't end up drinking alone. And let us know in the comments, who was your favorite Cheers regular? All right, now let's head to the place where everybody knows you knew it was coming. Number 15, the show that almost got canceled before you even found it. Now, when Cheers premiered on NBC in September of 1982, America collectively shrugged. The show didn't just underperform, it face-planted. Out of all the shows on network television, Cheers ranked 74th. That's deep in the basement. The kind of territory where shows go to quietly disappear and never get talked about again. So why didn't NBC pull the plug? Simple. They had nothing better to replace it with. NBC was dead last in the network wars, throwing spaghetti at the wall with both hands. Cheers stuck, but barely. Not because it was winning, but because everything around it was losing even harder. It's not really a vote of confidence, that's just survival by default. But the critics were losing their minds over it. While America was busy watching anything else, TV reviewers were handing out Best New Comedy Awards, and NBC executives, who normally ignored critics the way Cliff ignores social cues, actually did listen. So they took a gamble, and they renewed it. Then came summer reruns. Back when reruns, they weren't an insult, they were kind of a second chance. People who'd skipped the show all season suddenly discovered the bar, the banter, and Sam and Diane circling each other like two people who absolutely should not be together, but absolutely would be. It clicked. Word of mouth did what the premiere couldn't. Ratings climbed from 74th in its first season to the number 1 show in America by season 9. It took 8 years, but the show nobody watched became the show that nobody could shut up about. Number 14. The theme song almost didn't make it to the bar. Now, the theme song to Cheers feels like it's always existed, like someone carved it into the walls of a Boston pub in 1947, and the show just showed up to claim it. Not even close. Songwriters Gary Portnoy and Judy Hart Angelo had already written a track for a Broadway musical called Preppies. The Charles brothers, the creators of Cheers, wanted it immediately. The musical's producer blocked it flat, so the perfect song got lawyered off the table before it ever touched a bar stool. But they went back and kept swinging. My Kind of People, rejected. Another Day, also rejected. Multiple attempts, and nobody was happy. When they finally landed something that works musically, the lyrics were the problem. It was too Boston-specific. Red Sox losses, lost laundry tickets, it's misery tied to a very particular zip code. The producers wanted universal. Less geography, more feeling. Out went the hometown details, and in came the idea of a place where the noise stops and somebody actually knows your name. Now, NBC floated bringing in a big-name singer for the final recording, but they passed. Instead, Portnoy went into the studio with a small band and layered his own voice over and over until it sounded like a room full of people singing along after way too many rounds. It wasn't a choir, it was just one guy multiplied. 2 rejected attempts, 1 legal shutdown, a complete lyrical overhaul, and a theme so perfect that 40 years later, people, including myself, still sing it at bars without being asked. Number 13, the real bar that became a tourist trap. Now, Cheers wasn't just a set. It was based on a real basement bar in Boston called the Bull and Finch Pub, found through a Yellow Pages ad. The creator deliberately chose Boston as the setting. They sent their set designer out to scout, and an ad for a little pub on Beacon Street caught their attention. The moment the photos came back, they knew. Now, here's the part that messes with your memory, though. That center of the room bar where Sam wiped glasses and Norm would plant himself like he was paying a mortgage on that stool, well, it didn't exist in real life. The actual Bull and Finch was smaller, with the bar running along the wall. They redesigned the whole layout for cameras, but that didn't stop fans. By 1990, the Bull and Finch was drawing more than 500,000 visitors a year and had become one of Boston's top 3 tourist destinations. Tour buses, branded mugs, ashtrays, t-shirts. Regular customers suddenly trapped in a sitcom pilgrimage. The only problem? it didn't look like the show inside. Kershaw eventually added a ground floor replica of the TV bar to the building and opened a second location at Faneuil Hall in 2001, which gave tourists the version of Cheers that only ever existed on a set 3,000 miles away. In 2002, the Bull in Finch finally surrendered and changed its name to Cheers Beacon Hill, from a Yellow Pages ad to one of the most recognizable bars in the world. Number 12, Norm's real name was Hillary. For 11 seasons, Norm Peterson walked into that bar and the entire room erupted like he just won the World Series at Fenway. Norm! A ritual, a greeting, practically a religious experience. And for almost the entire run of the show, nobody questioned what they were yelling. Then, season 9 dropped the bombshell that Norm's full legal name was Hillary Norman Peterson. Hillary. The undisputed heavyweight champ of doing absolutely nothing productive was named Hillary, after his grandfather, apparently. The way it comes out is peak Cheers chaos. Vera tells Rebecca off camera, and Carla spreads it through the bar like a 5-alarm fire. And suddenly, everyone is processing the fact that the king of beer and bad posture has a name that sounds like it belongs on a country club membership card. Norm tries to salvage it, claims his grandfather killed a man for laughing at him, until he clarifies that Grandpa Hillary was actually a surgeon who botched an operation on the guy, so less barroom revenge and more unfortunate malpractice with a personal grudge. And here's the detail that makes it perfect. George Wendt's real-life wife, Bernadette Burkett, was the voice of Norm's never-seen wife Vera on the show, and their real-life child named Hillary. But no matter what his birth certificate says, the guy was never anything other than the man the whole bar yelled for. Number 11. Cliff Clavin was never supposed to exist. Cliff Clavin, the postal worker who turned every conversation into an unsolicited lecture that nobody asked for, was never in the script. No mailman, no little-known fact speeches. The character simply just didn't exist. John Ratzenberger originally walked in to audition for a minor one-line character whose entire job was to sit at the bar and just say, beer. He didn't get it. George Wendt had that locked down. But instead of heading to the parking lot, he stopped at the door and asked the producers a question that accidentally changed the entire show. Do you guys have a bar know-it-all? He didn't wait for permission. He launched into a bit about why the Bic pen was originally called the Beak pen, B-I-C-H. It's beak, not what you're thinking. The posture, the delivery, the unearned authority, it was all improvised on the spot. And the producers wrote the character in. But Cliff was originally planned for just 7 episodes, and he wasn't even a mailman. He was written as a security guard. The occupation changed to a postal worker 2 days before filming began. 7 episodes turned into 11 seasons. The chemistry with Norm clicked so fast that what started as a short-term experiment became one of the most recognizable duos in sitcom history. All because one actor decided that no was just the start of negotiation. Number 10. Sam Malone was almost a completely different athlete. Now, Sam Malone, the smooth-talking, recovering alcoholic bartender with a fastball and 100 bad decisions behind him, was never supposed to throw a pitch. Originally, the character was a former wide receiver for the New England Patriots. NBC tested 3 pairings for the role: William Devane with Lisa Eichhorn, Fred Dryer with Julia Duffy, and Ted Danson with Shelley Long. And when the executives watched Danson and Long read together, the decision made itself. There was only one problem. Danson had the swagger and he had the timing, but he looked about as much like an NFL wide receiver as Cliff looked like a Rhodes Scholar. As writer Ken Levine put it, Ted as a football bruiser is only slightly more believable than me as an NFL lineman. So the writers rewrote the character to fit the actor. Out with the football backstory, and in came a Red Sox jersey and a career arc inspired by real Boston pitcher Bill Spaceman Lee, a promising arm derailed by the bottle. Now that pivot changed everything. A football player behind a bar is just a big guy pouring drinks. A washed-up pitcher in a baseball city, that's a guy who had one thing that he was great at, lost it, and then built a second life around the only place that would still have him. That's the emotional engine of the entire show. And Fred Dryer, he ended up on Cheers anyway, as Sam's buddy, Dave Richards. The guy who didn't get the role, he still got a seat at the bar. Number 9, Norm's beer was absolutely disgusting. Now, every single episode, Norm Peterson grabbed a beer and drank it like a man who'd been wandering the desert for 3 days. Cold, refreshing, the highlight of his entire existence. It was all a lie. What George Wendt was actually drinking was something called near beer, non-alcoholic, flat, and room temperature. Ugh. The producers wanted to serve it on tap, but it wasn't available in kegs, so they ran cans of generic non-alcoholic beer through soda pop dispensers long before filming. By the time Norm wrapped his hands around the glass, the stuff had been sitting under hot studio lights for hours. And the foam? Well, the prop department would add a pinch of salt to every mug on set, forcing the frothy head that made it look fresh from the tap. So what Norm was actually drinking, take after take for 11 seasons, was warm, salty, flat liquid with a manufactured foam cap dissolving on top. Wendt later himself admitted that it required some serious acting. Writer Ken Levine recalled tasting it once and saying, Oh, God. Whenever director James Burrows called for another take, the whole cast prayed that nobody would blow a line, because another take means another sip. But here's the perfect ending. During filming of the series finale, after 11 years of the fake stuff, the cast finally drank real beer on camera. One last round. The real thing. The send-off that they earned one terrible sip at a time. Number 8. The bar was playing you the whole time. Everything about the Cheers set was designed to make you feel like you wandered into a real bar. And it worked, because, well, the whole thing was rigged. Right in the center of the bar sat a hidden hinge. The right half could swing open, and the wall behind it could fold back to reveal Sam's office. It wasn't seamless. Audience members at tapings remember it eating up real time, but it meant the crew never had to tear down and rebuild between setups. The bar itself was a prop doing double duty as a secret door. Filling that bar took serious effort, too. 30 to 40 extras minimum, just to make the pub look like it was properly occupied. Any fewer, and it would look like a bar that nobody wanted to drink in. But the sneakiest trick on the set were the lights under the bar. Nicholas Colasanto had a notoriously tough time memorizing his lines, so the crew taped script pages beneath the bar top and installed small lights pointing upward so he could read them mid-scene. The most lovably forgetful bartender on television was literally reading his lines off the bar. And those same lights accidentally solved another problem. Early on, the moody lighting made it hard to see Ted Danson's eyes on camera. The upward glow from Colasanto's cheat sheet setup happened to illuminate the actors' faces just enough to fix it. One sneaky solution and 2 problems eliminated. The audience at home never noticed any of it, which was, well, exactly the point. Hey, quick pause. If you've ever argued about whether Sam belonged with Diane or Rebecca, or if you've ever secretly wished that your local bar had a cliff so you'd feel smarter by comparison, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring that bell. And tell us in the comments what your favorite Cheers episode is. All right, let's get back down to the basement. Number 7. Carla was literally yelling at her real-life dad. Carla Tortelli came to work loaded for bear every single shift. Drinks were secondary. Verbal destruction, that was the main event. Nobody was safe. Not the regulars, not the strangers, and apparently not even her own father. Rhea Perlman's real-life dad, Phil Perlman, wasn't just a trained actor. He was a retired manager at a doll parts factory in Brooklyn, a Polish-Jewish immigrant who spent his career surrounded by, as Rhea recalled, lots of doll arms and eyeballs. But the man loved show business. When he visited the Cheers set in 1986, he walked up to director James Burrows and asked if he could sit in as an extra. Burrows shrugged. Oh, sure, anyone can sit at the bar. He parked himself on a bar stool as Phil, and the man simply never left. What started as a one-time appearance turned into 8 seasons. He appeared in over 30 credited episodes and was physically present in the background of well over 100 more. For years, Phil was secretly a silent background presence. And then in 1990, barfly actor Al Rosen passed away, and the writers needed someone to absorb the one-liner duties. Phil stepped up, suddenly delivering perfectly timed quips like a man who'd been waiting his whole life for someone to hand him a line. And Carla? She didn't go easy on him. In one episode, Rhea gets to splash water directly in her father's face, which is either the most entertaining perk of nepotism or the most Carla thing that's ever happened off script. Now, most people bring their parents to work once and then, send them home. But Rhea Perlman sat hers on a bar stool and turned him into one of the longest-running extras in sitcom history. Number 6, Kirstie Alley showed up as Diane on her first day. Now, replacing Shelley Long on Cheers was basically a suicide mission with a laugh track. For 5 seasons, the Sam and Diane dynamic had been the show's emotional core. Writer Ken Levine later admitted that they had no idea if the audience could accept a new character, or if they were just walking into a propeller. Then Kirstie Alley showed up for a table read wearing a blonde Shelley Long wig, a goody two-shoes dress, and yellow coating on her dark eyebrows. For about 3 seconds, the room, it went still. And then it landed. She wasn't trying to be Diane. She was just making fun of the idea. As Alley told People, she wanted to break the ice and get off to a fresh start. Director James Burrows said it cut the tension immediately. Ted Danson later said that she came in like a ball of fire. And then the welcome gifts got a little weird. On Alley's first night of shooting, George Wendt and John Ratzenberger realized that nobody had gotten her a present. So they drove down to Melrose, past a Big 5 sporting goods, and Ratzenberger said, "George, you want to buy her a shotgun?" So they did. The card read, "If you ever want to leave, you'll have to shoot your way out."
We pulled up and there was a Big 5 on the right, sporting goods store. And John goes, you want to buy her a shotgun? And I laughed for about 5 minutes.
Which is either the most inappropriate workplace welcome in TV history or the most Cheers thing that ever happened off camera. Maybe both. Alley thought it was hilarious, and just like that, she wasn't the replacement anymore. She was part of the bar. Number 5, the Cheers spinoff that everybody forgot. I mean, everyone remembers Frasier. Heck, we did a video on it. 11 seasons, 37 Emmys, one of the most successful spin-offs in television history. But Frasier wasn't the first time that Cheers tried to launch a character into their own show. That honor belongs to a spectacular misfire called the Tortellis. It followed Carla's ex-husband Nick as he chased his second wife Loretta to Las Vegas after she left him. So instead of a cozy Boston bar with sharp banter, you got neon, bad decisions, and shouting with nowhere to land. NBC actually had 2 spin-off pitches to choose from. The Tortelli Family Show by writer Ken Eston and a prequel about a younger coach in the 1950s pitched by David Angel. NBC went with the Tortellis. The Coach prequel never got made, which stings a little more every year. The Tortellis stripped out the balance that made Cheers work and cranked the chaos to 11. Critics buried it. The show caught some heat for leaning into broad Italian-American stereotypes. NBC brought in familiar faces early. You had Carla in the pilot, Norm and Cliff by episode 3, but it was like throwing life preservers at a ship that was already on the ocean floor. 13 episodes, and then it vanished. A few years later, a different creative team, David Angel, Peter Casey, and David Lee, would produce Frasier. Different writers, different approach, completely different outcome. One spinoff got 13 episodes and a burial. The other got 264 and a permanent spot in the Television Hall of Fame. Same bar, 2 very, very different drink orders. Number 4, the night that Cheers shut down America. On May 20th of 1993, America didn't go out. Approximately 93 million people sat down and watched a bar close for the last time. Roughly 40% of the country all tuned in with no streaming, no DVR, and no, catch it later. NBC dedicated the entire night to the farewell, kicking things off with a pregame special hosted by Bob Costas. The only finale that pulled bigger numbers was MASH. Now, inside that finale, they pulled off something that the show had never done. Diane came back, meaning for the first and only time in 11 seasons, Shelley Long and Kirstie Alley were both on screen. 2 eras of Cheers colliding in a single episode. But the moment that people still talk about? The cigars. Near the end, the cast is sitting around the bar smoking cigars, talking about the meaning of life, and Kelsey Grammer's voice starts to crack. But that wasn't Frasier getting sentimental, that was Grammer actually crying. After 9 years at that bar, he joined in season 3, it was ending. George Wendt jumped in with an improvised crack about Cliff's taste in shoes to keep things from falling apart. Then came the final moment. The bar empties out, Sam looks around and says quietly, "I'm the luckiest son of a bitch on earth." Then there's a knock at the door, and sorry, we're closed. The guy who knocked? Bob Broder, the real-life agent of the show's creators. Not an actor, not a cameo for laughs, just an inside nod that only the people who built the show would catch. For one night in 1993, everyone showed up for Last Call. Number 3, the night the cast got drunk on live TV. Yeah, the Cheers finale was emotional. It was carefully crafted and beautifully restrained. The Afterparty? That was none of those things. Right after the finale aired, NBC rolled straight into a special episode of The Tonight Show, broadcast live from the Bull and Finch pub in Boston. The dignified send-off. One problem. The cast had been toasting since 2 in the afternoon. By the time that Jay Leno kicked things off for 15 million viewers, they were gone. The kind of gone, meaning hammered, where someone hands you a microphone and your brain, it treats it as a suggestion. Water guns came out, spitballs were flying between cast members. Kirstie Alley, who couldn't be there in person, appeared via video singing a song where the only lyric was a single crude word on repeat. Woody Harrelson was making claims so outrageous that repeating them here might get us demonetized, so I'll just avoid that. You can look that up on your own. And out of the entire cast, Leno claimed later the only person that had been sober that night was Rhea Perlman. Carla Tortelli, the toughest person in the bar on screen, was apparently the only responsible adult in the building. That's the version that Jay told. Ted Danson, who spent 11 years behind a bar and knew exactly what a loaded customer looked like, later said that that wasn't quite right. Rhea was right there with the rest of them, which honestly makes the whole thing better. Leno stood there like a substitute teacher who'd lost control in the first 5 minutes. He later called the whole thing a huge mistake. The next morning, Danson sent flowers to apologize, and George Wendt called, because of course Norm would call. After 11 years of pretending to drink in a fake bar, the real send-off looked exactly like this. Number 2, the wedding invite that we didn't get an invite to. For 5 seasons, Sam and Diane were the entire show. The arguments, the chemistry, the gravitational pull of 2 people who were pretty terrible for each other and absolutely could not stop. By the season 5 finale, everybody already knew that the answer was coming, just not how. News of Shelley Long's departure had leaked months earlier. The question wasn't if she'd go, it was how the writers would handle it. So they did something devious. They filmed 3 separate endings. The first, the only one shot in front of a live studio audience, was a full wedding. Sam and Diane exchanged vows, celebration, the whole fairy tale. The audience went nuts. The second and third endings were filmed on a closed set. No audience, no leaks, and the reasoning went beyond preventing spoilers. The producers genuinely weren't sure if Long would go through with leaving. She didn't stay. The version that did air, Sam convinces Diane to pursue her writing career. She agrees to leave and promises to come back in 6 months. Sam watches her go and quietly says, "Have a good life." And then, alone in the bar, he fantasizes about elderly versions of himself and Diane dancing together. The future that they both knew they'd never get. The third ending? Well, the producers never revealed what that was. Now, when it aired, it scored a 28.4 rating and landed at number 1. Critics were split. Some called it disappointing, and others called it one of the all-time best breakup scenes. Both reactions proved the same point. People cared deeply about two fictional people who spent 5 years making each other completely miserable. The Sam and Diane era didn't end with a kiss at the altar. It ended the way that it was always going to, with two people who loved each other finally admitting that love, by itself, wasn't going to be enough. And somewhere on a closed set, a third ending that nobody's ever seen is still keeping it secret. Number 1, the photo behind the bar that watched over Cheers for a decade. From the very first episode, Nicholas Colasanto's coach was the heart of the bar. Not the funniest character, not the sharpest, but the warmest. The old-timer at the end of the counter who forgot your order twice and would still make you glad you came in. During season 3, his health declined in ways that the cast could see happening in real time. He kept the severity private. His last full episode was filmed in late November of 1984. On February 12th of 85, Colasanto died of a heart attack in his home. He was 61. Now, in his dressing room, he kept a framed photo of the Apache leader Geronimo, his good luck charm throughout his time on the show. After he passed, the cast took the photo down and hung it on the bar wall near the piano. No announcement, no storyline, no character ever even pointed at it or explained what it was. It just appeared, and it stayed. But the cast knew. Before tapings, cast members would stop by the photo, a quick touch, a quiet moment, just their way of checking in with Coach before the cameras rolled. Like he was still backstage, just running a little late. And then, in the finale, as the bar emptied out for the last time, Sam Malone, the last man standing, walks toward the back. Director James Burrows had specifically blocked this moment. On his way out, Danson stops and straightens the photo of Geronimo gently and carefully. No dialogue, no music cue, just a man adjusting a frame on a wall while the country watched without really knowing what they were seeing. In a show about a place where everybody knows your name, they made sure that nobody ever forgot his. And there you have it, everyone. 15 weird facts about the show that turned a Boston basement into the most beloved bar in television history. So which fact caught you off guard? Well, drop it in the comments, and while you're down there, settle this once and for all. Sam and Diane or Sam and Rebecca? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with whoever you used to watch Cheers with. They probably need this trip back to the bar as much as you do. Until next time, we're always glad you came. This is Remember When.